Hi everyone. So this week I bring to you a lovely interview with two surprise guests, and it serves as a sort of introduction for the next episode in Discovering Disability's media series, which will cover accurate portrayals in the media of disability, specifically as it pertains to cerebral palsy. So, if cerebral means having to do with the brain and palsy means weakness or issues with using your muscles, then it can be understood that cerebral palsy encompasses a group of disorders that affect a person's ability to move, maintain balance, and posture. Most CP, cerebral palsy, is related to brain damage right before or during birth, and that is called congenital CP. The symptoms of CP vary from person to person. A person with severe CP might need to use special equipment to be able to walk, or they might not be able to walk at all and might need lifelong care. A person with mild CP, on the other hand, might walk a little awkwardly but might not need any extra special help. Depending on which areas of the brain are affected, one or more movement disorders can occur. Stiff muscles, which is known as spasticity, uncontrollable movements, which is known as dyskinesia, and poor balance and coordination, which is known as ataxia. So I hope you stay tuned for a comprehensive interview that has to do with disability representation, and the lived experiences of having disability. Specifically, what it's like to grow up and live with cerebral palsy. Well, I guess we're just going to start with introducing yourselves, if you would like to. Carolanne, if you would like to go first.
My name is Carolanne. I am the UCLA DCP project manager, which is a lot of acronyms. And I'm also the subcommittee head for physical spaces on the University Committee on Disability. I'm involved with a couple other projects, including MetaMap and LA 2028. But yeah, lots of involvement. We're real glad to be here.
Hello, my name is Quinn O'Connor. I am an incoming third year at UCLA. I am a theater major with a minor in disability studies, and I am also on the University Committee on Disability as an undergraduate representative, as well as the chief of staff for the Facilities Commission and one of the co-founders of the Disabled Student Union here at UCLA.
So I guess first we could start with whoever wants to go first. If you could tell us a bit about your experience with cerebral palsy, and if that includes the experience from diagnosis to major developments, you can go ahead.
I wasn't diagnosed officially until I was maybe about like 2 or 3, I believe, but I know my parents used to tell me that like when I was like a baby, one of the doctors was like, oh, like this person, like this kid's like one side is stronger than the other. So like some like people kind of already had a sense that there was something up with my diagnosis and everything. So and as far as like major developments throughout my life, as I grew up, I had like a knee brace, I had a leg brace and an arm brace. I was a relatively active kid. My parents really wanted me to like be as active as I could and how I was able to, which I think honestly helped with my muscle development to the point of where it is. And like, that's why I'm relatively strong at this point in my life. So that's nice. But I was afraid of surgery as a kid. So I never like, there were surgeries offered to me, but I never really elected to take any. They weren't like needed per se, but they could have like helped a little bit. But for the most part, yeah, I just kind of stayed. And then I stopped wearing my braces at the age of like 12 or 13 because I was a teenager and I didn't think they were cool anymore. So, and I had like physical therapists and everything that at that point, I think around like 12 or 13, they were just like, if anything super major happens, you're in a lot of pain, let us know. But like, you're not getting any worse and you're not getting any like better. Like you've been pretty stable the last couple of years. So I don't go to therapy anymore for that. Unless there's like something super bad that happens, and I could definitely access those services. But other than that, that's pretty much my journey.
A little synopsis.
Yes,
Okay.
up until now.
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities with Quinn's story. So I was born in an unexpected breech, which means I was upside down when I was born, and so I was an emergency C-section. And there were some complications with my birth, but there was no diagnosis at that time. But my parents started to worry when I didn't start walking. I would actually scoot around on my butt with my feet in front of me and like push myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then, which my dad says was really amusing because I'd push myself into a corner or a wall and then couldn't turn myself around, and then I'd probably need to like flip me around and then just
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't start walking or really even see, I don't think I even tried to walk. And that was, of course, a milestone in motor development that they were worried about. So from what my dad's told me, they actually told my parents that I may never walk, which came as a surprise to me, which I didn't hear until I was in, I think, my late teens, which I can only imagine how they felt hearing something like that. But eventually I did, and progressed similar to Quinn. I have kind of what is the stereotypical CP limp, which has a foot drop and tightness. And I got around completely ambulatory for the first large chunk of my life. My CP, which is different than some others, comes with quite a lot of joint pain. And so I can't stand for long periods of time. So while I have quite a lot of ambulatory movement, the pain is a bigger factor for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a toddler, I had foot braces on both feet. And of course, those are the kind of thing that you grow out very quickly. So I didn't have them again until 4th or 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the paperwork I've seen, I've never really discussed this with my mother, but from the paperwork I've seen, she said that I stopped going outside and being kind of an active kid because they were weighing me down. I don't know if that was meant physically or socially or both, but I stopped wearing them, which was a curious thing for me to find out. I can only vaguely remember them, and I didn't have them after that point. I also think that there was an issue with insurance covering them. And they're not exactly a cheap thing. And medical devices and the cost of medical devices is a whole different conversation. I also had physical therapy, from diagnosis throughout my life. I got mine through the California Children's Services, so it's kind of like a social work welfare program, I guess, for disabled children. But my physiatrist was kind of a volunteer doctor from a local hospital, so I never really had a close relationship with any of my physiatrists because it was basically whoever was willing to volunteer with the program. And then my PT became less and less frequent, and there was a lot of home programs where they give you stretches to do on your own. And then I aged out. You age out of the program at 21, and so I aged out, and I tried to go to a physiatrist through my health insurance only one time because basically they told me to do the same stretches that I had always been doing and couldn't really didn't look into it further, which always made me sad to think that the healthcare system wasn't built for people like us. So as soon as you present something that is a weird gray area for them, they kind of shrug it off and go, oh, well, you're doing what you can do.
I was wondering, how does having CP impact your identity? And if you feel Carolanne being semi-ambulatory and you, Quinn, feeling ambulatory, do you feel it's difficult to fully identify with the disabled community or not?
Like I said earlier, my identity as a disabled person wasn't necessarily formed until I guess you can say my awareness of how disability fits into like how I walk through life. No pun intended, I do walk, but just say, like how I go through life, until like people started noticing and like gave bad negative reactions towards that. And then throughout high school, so there were no other like physically disabled kids in middle school or high school for me. So that kind of like made me feel alone, etc., whatever. But I feel like throughout high school, my overall confidence grew in myself just as a person. So me like being more open about my disability started, I like started that journey in high school, so that kind of made me more comfortable in myself. And then I think once I got to UCLA, I did like start, honestly, not until like last year, I started meeting more disabled people. Like last year I met Carolanne. I met, like, once I started working in the facilities commission specifically, like there were more disabled people, and I was able to kind of like create more of a community and meet people, that some who had my same disability, others who didn't. Like, it was, that helps me a lot. And now I definitely do like own like my disability as part of my identity, and it is something that has shaped me, like looking back through high school and my childhood. Like, it was definitely something, and I'm trying to own it more so in these past like couple of years, so that's been really fun. And I will say, a fun fact, I did use my disability for my college essays, just because that's what I do. And my title of my college essay was "Learning How to Tie My Shoes at the Age of 15." And it was like a good hook, like a really fun hook. So like that's kind of where I guess you could say I started, like through that. Like, I feel like essay writing too in college, because I just have taken classes that have within disability studies and like random GEs, where I have had to like analyze my intersectionality and just like my disability in general. And I feel like through writing like my college essay at first and essays in college in general have really like helped me see how disability plays into my life. And it's I feel like essay writing is kind of like a weird thing to like.
Oh no, I feel that, especially
but,
essays on your identity.
Yeah,
I feel that. Yeah.
So that's kind of, I feel like that's definitely what helped kind of craft how I view myself as a disabled person now.
I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of layers here. So I like Quinn, I don't think that I had a clear identity or anything like that for quite some time. I didn't realize I was different at all, I think, until about 4th grade, which is when the teasing started. And one vivid memory I have is we had to run a mile for, I think it was 5th grade, for presidential fitness or whatever it was. And I was second to last to finish. The only person behind me was a kid who had had an asthma attack. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I wasn't particularly overweight or unfit, and I just could not wrap my head around like why I had been so slow, because I had no conception of the fact that my stride was different, my gait was different at this point. And that was one of the first big signs to me of like, wait, something's clearly not quite right. And everything hurt, like everything was on fire as I was trying to do this. I think it was just a little older than that when I had first seen footage of myself walking. And that was a really defining moment for me. I remember being really horrified by it. And even now I get uncomfortable with it, because it just feels like that's not me. Like, it's disassociating, really. When I watch it, it does make me think like that person looks really disabled, and that's kind of hard to think. And as we have discussed just before this, like the concept of internalized ableism, like having this concept that looking different than the gen pop walking around and stuff is a bad thing, is something we should be ashamed of, is a hard thing to process. But then through middle and high school, I also didn't have people in my social circles or in my schools with physical disabilities, so that was a pretty lonesome journey. So I think that was really hard on my development with this identity, because it became paramount for me to hide it and to try and be as passable as possible, because I totally associated with, okay, well, I'm going to get shoved into lockers or knocked over or teased or whatever if the more disabled I look. So I need to do my best to not let people see, to pretend to be as able as possible, to be really conscious of how I'm walking and like all of these different things. And that definitely led through high school. I still did that. And then there was this weird, almost ingrained, I don't want to say pressure, but ingrained pressure to be as able as possible that just didn't dissipate. Because you think, oh, well, if I'm faking this so well, if I can just fake it a little better and a little better, then at some point it's going to be a non-issue. And that was, looking back, I feel sorry for past me to think about it that way, because that's a lot of pressure to try and do that. But when I got to college, and this was where the semi-ambulatory thing comes into play, I started my first couple of years walking around campus, but it was so much wear and tear on my body because I hadn't had to walk that much before. I actually started collapsing on campus, where my legs would just give out, like too much on my body.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's a lot of emotions between like, man, I need to work out more. I'm not strong enough. If I keep like that mentality, if I keep pushing, it'll be a non-issue. If I keep trying to be able, it's going to be a non-issue.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a long time for me to recognize, wait a minute, actually, there may be a breaking point. This may not be something I can just keep, fake it till you make it. Which is when my parents ended up looking into getting the wheelchair, and I was terrified of that. I was terrified of the idea of having my disability, instead of as a constant thing to be hidden, immediately on display, which became even more of an issue when we saw the price tag on said wheelchair, which the total price I think came out to just under $12,000, which we did not have.
I was not prepared for that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because in addition to having because wheelchairs are like custom fit to you and they range hugely, but because of the topography of campus, I needed something called a power assist to help with the hills.
Because the hills.
Mm-hmm. Right. Price tag on that chair was way more than we were expecting, so we actually had to I couldn't get the chair for a whole year because we just didn't have the money for it. So I applied for some scholarship money and had some family members who donated some and ended up getting it. But it completely changed my last couple of years of college. I started getting way better grades. I started going out and being more social. And a lot of people have this concept that a wheelchair is something that keeps you captive, something that is a tool that limits you. And in my case, and in many cases, it's really a piece of independence that is different. Plus, it takes the pressure off of me of ever having to have a conversation about my disability, which is kind of nice, because if I wheel in a wheelchair, no one's going to be like, wait, you're disabled?
What's up?
I know, which is a whole nother conversation about how you address these things. But so after that happened, I started getting involved in the disabled community more and really identifying as a disabled person, because having the chair honestly was like a light switch for me. Like, I can identify as disabled now. This is a piece of me that's out there, and I can explore that. And that's when I started looking into things like wheelchair basketball and realizing that even as a semi-ambulatory person, regardless of the wheelchair, there were sports out there for me, and there was community out there for me. And that was wild for me, super duper awesome, and I've never looked back. And as Quinn said, the more I embrace it, the more doors it opens, the more people I meet, and it's defined, I think, just about everything I've done since then. All the volunteering that I do, my job that I love, and just what I spend my day and the people I spend it with are all on the same page, which is super awesome.
You talking about you seeing a recording of you walking for the first time reminded me of, it was very, for me, when, I remember, looking, every time I'd, walk out of a grocery store, just, in a parking lot, and I'd, walk to my car and pass the other cars, and I'd try not to look and, see my reflection through the car, because then I'd see how I walk, and I would see my limp, and it was, for a while, I remember as, I don't know, 11 or 12-year-old, looking in the mirror and not recognize, I just could not see myself. I was this person's not me. I have no idea who this person is. That's not who I view myself as. Yeah. Just because, it was so, because just of the fact that disability just wasn't really a conversation in my household, I never, I don't know, it's just I never really accepted my walk, and even even up until now, I don't really look at myself too much anymore, but I try not to focus on it, as I am trying to work on accepting my disability as part of me. But it is just every so often I see myself walking and I'm like, wait, what's up? What's happening? But it's definitely gotten better, but that just like reminded me, like I had that same experience of just like seeing myself walk as a kid.
Yeah, it
and,
can be
not
pretty
recognizing
jarring.
it.
Yeah.